The glow of the city skyline flickered against the tall windows of Alexander's penthouse office. It was late, and the building was nearly empty, except for the quiet hum of a cleaning crew down the hall. He leaned back in his leather chair, reviewing the final projections for an upcoming deal. Numbers that were supposed to define the next decade of his company's success. Then, a single envelope appeared on his desk. No sender, no markings. Just his name, written in an unsteady hand. His pulse remained steady as he opened it. Inside, a stack of financial documents, copies of offshore transfers, falsified invoices, and a signature that did not belong to him. At the bottom of the last page was a handwritten note. Check your inner circle before it's too late. Alexander's expression remained unreadable, but his mind raced. He had built his empire on precision and control. There was no room for error, no room for betrayal. He pulled up the company's financial reports on his screen, cross-referencing the numbers with the documents in his hand. Within minutes, the truth became undeniable. Someone had been draining money from his accounts, rerouting funds into hidden investments overseas. The most unsettling part? His own wife's name was attached to the transactions. His fingers tapped lightly against the desk. Not out of anger, not out of shock. He wasn't the type to react. Instead, he observed. The next move had to be calculated, silent. A betrayal of this scale required more than confrontation. It required strategy. As the city continued its restless hum beyond the glass windows, Alexander made a quiet decision. He wouldn't expose them. Not yet. He would let them think they had won. Because when he struck back, it would be too late for them to escape. The morning sun cast long shadows across the boardroom table as Alexander took his usual seat at the head. Around him, executives exchanged pleasantries, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath his composed expression. At exactly 9 a.m., Russell, his business partner and longtime friend, walked in with an easy confidence. The same confidence of a man who believed he had the upper hand. Alexander didn't react. He simply watched as Russell presented the financial expansion plan, a proposal filled with projections and carefully worded justifications. The board nodded along, unaware that the foundation of this deal was built on deception. Then, just as Russell concluded, Alexander leaned forward and spoke, his tone measured. "This is an impressive presentation, Russell. Almost too perfect." Oh, flicker of unease crossed Russell's face. "Before we move forward, I'd like our legal team to review a few discrepancies I noticed in last quarter's transfers. Just a formality." Silence. A slight shift in Russell's posture. Alexander smirked. Internally, he had just placed the first piece of the trap. The meeting continued, but Alexander barely listened. His focus was on Russell's reactions, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle clench of his fist, signs of a man who knew he had been caught, but couldn't yet see the full picture. As the meeting adjourned, Alexander turned to Marcy, his most trusted financial officer. "I want everything traced, every dollar, every name." Marcy nodded, understanding the weight behind his words. As he exited the boardroom, Alexander didn't look back. He had just fired the first silent shot, and soon the war would begin. The scent of expensive perfume lingered in the air as Gloria adjusted her diamond bracelet, her laughter echoing through the upscale hotel lounge. Across from her, Russell leaned in, whispering something that made her smirk. Neither of them noticed. The figure seated in the far corner, a plain-looking man in a grey suit, sipping black coffee, his eyes never leaving them. Back at his office, Alexander received a message. They checked in, same suite as last time. He exhaled slowly, closing the file on his desk. It contained photographs, credit card receipts, and surveillance logs. Evidence, undeniable and damning. A knock at the door. Jonathan, his attorney, entered. "We have enough to take them down now," Jonathan said. Alexander shook his head. Not yet. Instead, he picked up his phone and made a single call. Move forward with the first phase. Freeze the accounts. Far across town, Russell's credit card was declined at the hotel's front desk. He frowned, trying another, then another. Each one declined. Panic flickered in his eyes. Gloria leaned closer. "Something wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation. Russell forced a smile. He had no idea that the ground beneath him had just begun to crumble. Russell stormed into the office, his usual arrogance replaced with barely concealed frustration. He barely acknowledged the staff as he pushed into his office and slammed the door. Alexander arrived moments later, greeting employees with his usual calm demeanor. Russell was already waiting for him in the executive suite. "You froze my accounts," Russell hissed. Alexander arched an eyebrow. "Did I?" Russell's hands curled into fists. "You're making a mistake." Alexander took a seat, exuding complete control. "The only mistake was trusting you." He placed a folder on the table, evidence of fraudulent transfers, offshore accounts, and an affair that had now become public knowledge. Russell's face paled. "You wanted to play this game," Alexander said, leaning in. "Now let's see if you can handle losing." The weight of those words settled in, and for the first time, Russell knew he was trapped. Gloria stared at the eviction notice in disbelief. Her world, built on luxury and power, was collapsing. First, the frozen credit cards. Now, the condo that wasn't actually in her name. She reached for her phone, dialing Russell. Straight to voicemail. Panic settled in. Then her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Check your bank account." She did. Balance. 0.2. Her heart pounded. Russell had promised her security, money, a future. But now, she had nothing. And she finally realized. Alexander had orchestrated all of it. Russell sat across from his lawyer, rubbing his temples as the walls closed in. "You're out of options," his lawyer said. "The board is voting to remove you tomorrow. The lawsuit is airtight." Russell swallowed hard. "What if I leave the country?" His lawyer scoffed. "With what money? Alexander made sure you have nothing." Russell clenched his jaw. There had to be a way out. But the next morning, as he arrived at the office, security was waiting. "Mr. Russell, you're no longer authorized to enter the premises." Humiliation burned through him as his employees watched him escorted out. Alexander didn't bother to look up from his desk as Russell passed his glass-walled office. The message was clear. The game was over 5 years later. Alexander stood at the top of his skyscraper, gazing over the city. His company had flourished, stronger than ever. Russell, once a name spoken with respect, was now a cautionary tale. Gloria, once draped in designer clothes, now worked a modest job just to survive. Their choices had led them here. As Alexander adjusted, his cufflinks, his phone buzzed with a new business opportunity. With a small smirk, he turned away from the window. Some betrayals end in destruction, but the best revenge, success.